Coming up on this episode of the IoT Inc. Business Show.
A successful project from the point of view of things you can control is make sure the organization is bought in, go through thorough planning and take baby steps when introducing the product, because as you said, Bruce, that's going to change.
Getting an IoT project off the ground isn't easy. It's not just about launching a new product based on new technology, it's the changes the organization must make to reach escape velocity. In this episode of the IoT Business Show, I speak with Asaf Sadowski about the importance of creating an IoT proof of concept and the steps involved to get there.
All this and more on this episode of the IoT Inc. Business Show. The people, the business, and the technology of the next generation internet. This is the IoT Inc. Business Show. And now, here's your host, Bruce Sinclair.
Hello and welcome to the IoT Inc. Business Show. This show is for business leaders and managers employing the Internet of Things for their business or the business of their customers. I'm your host, Bruce Sinclair, and I interview the industry's leading authorities to find out how they use IoT to improve business and create value. If you like this show, subscribe to it on iTunes and go to iotinc.com to check out my complimentary articles, videos, meetups, and webinars. I heard what you said about getting a higher-low perspective. It's good to go deep, but every once in a while, you need to pop up for air. So we're popping up for air with this episode. This episode isn't about business, but it is getting closer. It doesn't mean that we're done with tech yet. This is a breather to get a broader perspective before diving deep again into tech. I believe you need to know how it works before you can put it to work. So we still have some tech in our future. As a quick note, if you're listening before May 2015, I'll be presenting my full-day Building Your IoT Business workshop at Internet of Things World at Moscone Center in San Francisco on May 14th. Send me an email at bruce@iotinc.com if you have any questions, or just head over to my media site, www.iot-inc.com, for more information. With me today on episode 15 is Asaf Sadowski. Asaf is CEO of Spicebox Labs and provides R&D services to companies developing IoT products. He has over 10 years of project management experience across healthcare and tech, including hardware manufacturers and developers, software vendors, and service providers. Asaf is a member of the IoT Business Meetup and introduced himself at the end of our last meeting. He followed up with me about an hour after my original podcast member, or guest I should say, postponed. So it was perfect timing for me to invite him to be on the show. Asaf, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here, Bruce.
So how many of our meetups have you been to?
Actually, that was the third one.
The third one, okay. Yeah, and I think that was 3 out of 8, maybe. I think it was like that.
Yep.
Well, that's good. So you've been coming back, and I know I've noticed you there a couple times. But they've been getting a little bit bigger, and so it's been a little bit harder to kind of meet and greet everybody. But it's nice that you came up, and it was perfect timing because I think, as I mentioned, I've been getting some feedback from our listeners, and they've been saying, yeah, they love the deep down tech, but it'd be kind of nice to get kind of a high level overview of IoT as well, from a system point of view. So we'll be doing a little bit of that. But I also want to ask you, where did Spicebox come from? What's the story behind that?
So the name is actually that was one of my co-founders. Yes, actually, he comes up with names.
Okay,
he felt
all
that,
right.
Since we're putting that spicy taste into products, he felt that was appropriate. We actually started a few years ago, when our first goal or the vision was we then smartphone was just starting to penetrate.
Yep.
And the the markets, and we realized that tiny computer, what's obvious to everyone now, that the tiny computer we carry in our pockets is going to change the world. And we started by developing products to integrate with it. And at first it was physical connection, but then quickly we realized that we can use other wireless protocols. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth was starting up then, and so on. And as we advanced, we got more and more consulting requests from other companies that were trying to develop their own products. And we realized that that's actually what we want to do. We want to be involved in as many projects as we can on the development side. And we slowly became more and more focused on that services part of our business. We've been doing that for the last 2 or 3 years full time now. That allows us to be involved in many of such projects where companies taking the IoT dream and turning it into actual products. And it's exciting.
Taking the IoT dream, adding a little bit of spice, and and making IoT products. I like it. Yeah. I like it. Well, let's start. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your background in IoT. I think you did get into some of the background, but tell me a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I come from a background of operations and background management, and I've done that through several roles, and had the chance in each of my role. I was always involved in those type of functions, project management, turning strategy into operational steps. With IoT, that started, like I said, about 2009. The IoT terms wasn't so widely used then, but we then realized, like I said, that we're looking at a bright future here, and since then been very close with the industry, watching it grow. Had experienced tremendous growth in the last couple of years, and we're happy to be part of it.
Happy to be spicing it up and making people's dreams come true.
Exactly.
Then, huh?
Exactly.
What's something interesting about you? Tell us a fact that maybe not that many people know.
I guess my background, before I started working on project management, I was an avid soccer player. I was actually professional in my home country.
Professional?
Yeah, in my home country of Israel. That was a long time ago. Unfortunately, today I stick to watching matches rather than playing them.
Why don't we step back a little bit? So you're focused originally on providing connectivity to the products to make them IoT products, and then working your way through the technology into networking and the analytics. Why make an IoT product? Why do that in the first place?
So there's a few reasons there. First are I like to think of them as external forces and internal forces. External forces are the market forces, and more customers and more users, consumers are expecting IoT. The self-quantify movement, which is growth a lot in the last couple of years, side by side with the IoT, it definitely helped fuel that growth. And what becomes more and more obvious, and we see that with our clients, is that they are worried about the competition. So if your competitor isn't doing that right now or isn't developing an IoT product, they definitely think about it. So you want to think about it as well and see how that fits into your strategy.
So those are external forces. What are the internal ones then?
The internal forces, or mainly comes from the business value that you can create. IoT is still innovative, and it's going to stay innovative for at least a couple more years. It's a great way to differentiate yourself, support new use cases for your users, And then while doing that and providing them with the new features and new products, this is a great way to engage with them, basically, and understand them better. A lot of our clients are not used to engage with their consumers after selling them the product. So
it's usually where it ends, right?
Yeah, and suddenly you get a chance to engage on daily basis with them, and not with them, and not only that, but understand their behavior, the context, timing where they use the product, location, maybe interactions with other products, and that helps. That helps marketing departments and drive a lot of strategic decision. It helps drive new business models. Suddenly there are opportunities for new revenue streams. So all of these things play into that.
Yeah, and I think they're related too. I can reflect. I think maybe one of my most favorite jobs that I've done was a product manager. And I was a product manager for years. And I'll tell you, it was absolute gold when you went and visited your customers, and you saw your product being used in vitro, so to speak. And there's nothing like getting primary data like that, except now, with IoT, like you're saying, it's like you have a window, a 24-hour, window into your customer's world. And, just to the point of competition that you brought up earlier, the interesting thing about IoT products is the iteration on them. So again, now when I was a product manager, it was mostly software. So we were iterating on our versions maybe once every 6 months, maybe once a year for a big release. But that was based on getting new features, competitive data, and so forth. Now with an IoT product, when you have this real-time data coming in for, like you said, how the product's being used and the utility and the usability of the product, you can iterate really quickly. And that is why I think that companies need to at least be looking at IoT, because it's not just a linear function. If your competitor releases an IoT product and then you release one year later, it's not 1 year that's gone by, because this cycle, don't you think? This cycle can be so quick in learning about and in getting this data directly from your product that you can iterate on your product many, many times in that year. And so I don't know, I'm not sure if you agree with that, but it seems to me that it's like a hyper cycle of innovation can happen once you start getting all this real data. And it's really hard to catch up. It's not like you're just 1 year back. It's like you're years back in your competition.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and that's a great point. And actually, that's a plus. And for us, and for our clients, which are that are mainly on the R&D side of things, that actually could be a pain point, because you're right. You get feedback so fast. The product manager, the next morning, he's going to be at your door asking for new features and a new roadmap. And we definitely see that immediate feedback with the product, and immediate push from the organization to keep getting better and continuously improve it. So definitely, you always have to take into account limitation like resources, but that's always going to be the balance.
Yeah. And well, we've said it before on this podcast, but when you release an IoT product, it's not just releasing an IoT product. You really need to transform your business. And that's kind of, if you look at it, all different areas of your business need to be transformed to be able to support this data, and then that's the central thing. And like you said, the development guys may not like it, but they're gonna have to change. There is a different speed of which hardware and software can be developed, so you can update the software much quicker than the hardware, obviously. But it does require more agility, and it does require a different mindset, right? And I think that just comes part and parcel with moving into the IoT sphere. It's not just you're not just creating an IoT product, you're creating an IoT company or division, at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. And we see that all the time. So that's those are real processes that happens within our client companies and even corporate structure.
Yeah. Well, what are the steps? So take us through, maybe from the start, but what are the steps that go into, so you've been dealing directly with these companies. So what are the steps that go into creating an IoT product? Who you working with? What do you start with? Just take us through the steps. And because obviously our listeners, many of them are probably considering building an IoT product or buying an IoT product. But I think we'd be interested in just to get your perspective on that.
Yeah. So the first step, and that's probably similar with other new products or new decision or should I say new product lines. Mm-hmm. First, determine the product strategy. Really understand what are your goals, what are the new use cases that you're about to introduce, new customers. Are these new customers, new markets? Are you trying to upsell to your existing customers? Mm-hmm. And then really decide on these areas. I can think of a couple of examples from our clients. We worked with, for example, a company that does security products for the home. They wanted to go into IoT. It took them, probably they're fairly large organization, it took them more than a year to go through this process. So they started.
So they did go through the strategy process beforehand then.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that a year is a little longer than what you want, especially now. Right. They started earlier than other companies, so maybe they had some more time. But they did go through a very thorough process of thinking about what they want to achieve. And once you have that and you decide on the product that you wanna build, then you go into the details.
Now this is just to interrupt, Asaf. Now this is kind of a best practice, but are you seeing, in your experience, are you seeing business being, strategy and business driving this, or are you seeing R&D or development driving this? What is? I mean, that's I think the way it should happen. Is that the way it's really happening out there?
So it happens. Actually, it happens. It goes both ways. I should say what we see on many of our organizations, with our larger organizations. We also have startups, and they're usually very focused on what they want to build. Right. With large organization, they're usually someone within that organization, and that person is usually, on most cases, is going to be a senior R&D person that identify that new trend, and he pushes that up the organization. So he identifies IoT as a strategic direction, and see how that goes in. How that will go with the overall company strategy and other product lines. So he usually champions it and pushes it along. And as you mentioned before, a lot of the time, this person will end up heading that new IoT division, ideally. And those are the more successful project, I should say, in terms of internal buying. The organization, the leadership understand that there's a new line here, a new division needs to be created, and usually that person that started it will lead that division or will be a key person in it and help push along and develop the product. Okay,
well that's a good career move then. It sounds.
It goes into there's a lot of intricacies in there, and politics always play a part. But I guess the successful projects are the one where leadership stands behind R&D and let them run with that new product line. They understand the value.
So starts with R&D, but then is embraced by leadership, and that's great. Now I'm interested digging down a little bit deeper within R&D. Is this what type is it? Is it IT? Is it more, I don't know, the development? Is it operational folks? Who or is there really a pattern there?
I don't know if there's a pattern there. It's mostly about personality. I think it would be someone
right. That's a good point.
Someone who's into research and learning about new technologies, and someone that like to stay informed with what's happening.
Right.
So these are the guys, and usually you can find at least a couple within every R&D department.
Yeah.
It's not the specific role, but more type of personality.
Okay. It's more of a personality. No, that makes sense. Okay, so we've an idea has been germinated, and then they've taken it to management. Management has embraced it. Then what happens after that?
Then you have to start planning. And so usually Spicebox, we get involved a little bit before that.
Okay.
And we sometimes after, what we like to be part of the planning, and we think our experience could help with this process. Then the planning, there's a couple of things that has to go into that. First, and we think, and that's our approach. There are different approaches. We think it should be very user-centric approach.
Okay.
Understand who the user is and start with the use cases. Those could be changed or adjusted later, but we need to really think of who we're trying to engage. At the end, I think it's very simple. If you're not, if the product design is not well thought of, it's going to be hard or not as appealing for the user to engage with it. And then a lot of great work could go unnoticed. So we try to think of the user and make sure that we keep them in mind throughout the entire design process.
Okay, and when you say the planning, then you're saying the UX, the user experience planning. Okay.
Yeah, user experience, and that would go hand in hand with the system architecture.
Okay.
And that's there's a few different components that have to go into that, and we usually start from the ground up and then iterate. You need to think about hardware, what type of hardware you're going to use, and there's of course a few decisions that go into that. Sensors and memory, is it going to be microprocessor or maybe Linux based? You want to think about security. You of course want to choose the wireless protocol, and that's one of the things where user experience can drive the decision. Very much. We work with a medical device company, with a home medical device company, that was actually undecided between Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. On one hand, Bluetooth is very easy to use. Wi-Fi could be cumbersome.
Yes.
But on the other hand, since their device specific had a constant power supply, then Wi-Fi had a lot of advantages to offer, like a direct connection to the cloud. So they ended up. So that's just an example. So they decided to go that route.
Okay, so you're doing user experience, and in parallel you're doing system design. And what type of period of time are we talking about here?
So that depends. We usually don't like to. It could. We want to put a deadline on it. And usually try to not go over. I think 2 months would be the most extreme cases, and that really depends on how many discussions and how many internal meetings you're having with the customer. Usually we can get a basic design, and I can go into that a little later about how to then go. But between 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month for the first POC.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's both on the design of it and the system design?
Yeah. So design, the system design, the UX on the user experience, it's more on the flow side. Maybe not if we're talking about mobile applications or web interface. We won't have the design ready in a month, but we'll have the principles ready and the flow. And the concepts, all of these will be ready on the design stage. On the system architecture, we'll have the basic components mapped out, and we'll start working from there.
Now, when you say flow, you mean data flow?
So data flow and user experience flow. Well,
okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So then what happens then?
So what our approach is very much like startups. As we said, we're a lot of times see new organizations form within our clients. So the team we're working on is basically a startup within the organization.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah, and because of that, we adopted a lot of the principles that are best practices for startups. For example, we don't have to, we are not looking for funding, but we would like to start with a proof of concept. So that means let's take basic hardware, evaluation boards, the components that are easiest to work with, and let's get a basic system working, a basic system that's doing just one thing. The most important thing that we want to test, the most important function for the new product, maybe it could be 3 functions, but not more than that.
Okay. And how are you doing the prototyping then? Are you using off-the-shelf kind of prototyping, using network platform, an IoT platform for the prototyping? How is that normally done?
So we try to use off-the-shelf as much as we can, as minimum customization as we can, and that could be basic chipsets by your large chipset manufacturers, or it could be a specific platform that we've identified.
Okay.
If we think there's a specific need for the product, we'll help our client identify the right platform to use that will satisfy that need. So
now, when you say platform, that's an overloaded term. In what sense do you mean platform?
So platform, those are basically the IoT platform that we work with are usually comprised of a few different components. They could come of I can think of a platform where there's a hardware module with RF chip on it. Maybe there's some a cloud API that we can start working with, just so we can start running and understand how the basic product would look like. We will integrate that with the product to start testing.
Okay.
So once we have that proof of concept, there's a few that serves a few goals. First one is, of course, just test the product, see how it looks like, better understand the effort going forward. What customization do we want to look at, and that go into R&D decisions. but it also, and that we found to be true over and over again, that serves the purpose of pushing the product and getting internal buy-in. So going back to the CEO with a working prototype after 3 months and showing them the new functions, that goes a long way for support in the next steps. So we're focusing on that stage to make sure it does maybe just 1 to 3 things, but it does them the way we want them to be.
Now, non-human, but not including human costs. What type of budget is generally required? So our listeners are thinking, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Now, not including the people, but what type of budget are we looking at here to get to the stage of, like you said, a proof of concept with maybe 3 of the top features working, so you can show the boss?
Oh, so if we're looking just at components and you're doing it internally without the people cost, it could be several thousands of dollars, not more than that.
Oh, so under 10 then?
Yeah, under 10 because all you need is just a basic set of components, and those are
right.
Those won't be that expensive. You may need a development license. Usually for the POC stage, you can stay off that for a specific development environment. But usually all of that would cost several thousand, under 10.
Way under 10. And services, are you needing to pay for those at this point?
It depends. It depends what type of product you're trying to get it. Usually, that is the point where organizations look for our help or someone like us.
Yes.
Those organizations that goes into IoT, and I'm generalizing now, most of them are coming mostly from hardware. They have they have the mechanical engineers, industrial engineers. They have electronic engineers. Not sure they have someone that did wireless. Maybe they have someone or a couple of guys that understand wireless and can work with it. But once you go further into mobile, web, cloud, you probably need someone's help.
Right. Yeah, because there's not network engineering isn't necessarily a skill set that was required in the past.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also a good way to understand if you need it. You start with a consultant, and then once you decide that works, you bring someone in, and that's a new division we spoke of.
Okay, so you have your POC working, and is it just normal project management from there, or is there anything unique about the IoT product here?
It's mostly project management from then on. I think what's unique is, again, what we said and you said again and again. These are new skills, new technologies. It's a new product line, and it's that needs to take into account. On many of our projects, we're solving problems that the organization never faced. Security is a big thing in that. With that, and again, I'll give another example with a security company. They have a lot of security expertise, but that was focused on their hardware.
Sure.
Not necessarily once you go up to mobile and to the cloud, and how that affect the considerations and whatever you want to do, and the level of security you want to maintain. So we definitely help them with that. There were some new protocols that were implemented to help them launch their product successfully.
Now, you mentioned new. You're needing to learn new skills, needing to do new things, and typically people don't like new. They don't like change. And so, you mentioned one pushback before. You said the R&D guys are like, geez, we're having to, I don't like this pace. What are some heads up that you can give, our listeners for that you're going to get different pushback? Who's trying to derail this, or where's the friction at this point? Because you've got a POC, people know about it now, they kind of see how things are going to have to change. Where's the friction points? Where's the pushback?
Okay, so again, great question. I think this is where it flips, or it's the other way around. Because usually on the R&D, they love learning new technologies and adding new skills. Usually we keep a great relationship with the engineers we're working and integrating with. And there's a lot of brainstorming and knowledge transformation, and that's great. Where it could, like I said, what could derail this is a lot of the on the budget side, and that's because it's always about the opportunity costs, right? Funding one project, meaning not funding another one, so that is kind of these are probably the things we see that may delay a project or change it.
So is that a function of education? I mean, or how have you seen, people get around that? I mean, how do they push the IoT product through when, like you said, it really is an opportunity cost, and that means they're not doing something else? And what should they do?
So there's a couple of ways, right? And that's also that goes into organizational skills and theories, but
politics, okay.
Yeah, but what we found to be really helpful is actually, and that's why starting with a POC and getting in alpha quickly out there, that really helps, because usually those products and we see that all the time, they create an effect. There's a wow that goes with them. For a company that did hardware or focused on hardware, and suddenly they have a mobile application, a web interface, marketing.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Marketing departments understand understand the power with analytics. So that's one thing. The other thing is trying to identify those competing products or competing projects, I should say, and see how to get them on board too. And we saw that happening in a couple of projects.
Yeah. Okay, so I would imagine too, is it at this point, when do they start introducing some potential customers or some existing customers? I would imagine if you have a few customers that are using it and saying they like it, that would probably help the cause too, or is that a little bit early to bring the customers in? I wouldn't think so.
So you start with customers, probably around once you have a successful alpha, and we call an alpha, basically that's an internal thing. You let different people in the organization try the product, right? And you broaden it. Getting positive feedback from customers, that's always great. It also, and that's also something that you always have to be prepared, and that's also very similar to a startup environment. That the feedback will cause you to go into a different direction.
Absolutely.
So, and focus on different features. An example I can think of is we worked with a company that did work in the electronic cigarettes arena,
Okay, like vapor.
A vapor, yeah, and they received some immediate feedback, not just from consumer who love their product, but actually from specialty shop owners that thought they could use that to introduce customers from with electronic cigarettes with the vapors, and they requested some new features to be put in. So that helped them focus and change and find the first market to introduce that product to.
My experience in talking with a lot of folks that are doing this firsthand is that very rarely will what the company originally goes out to accomplish or their vision is very rarely what the product ends up being. And so the lesson there is that from a prototyping point of view, you need to be able to have an environment that can change, and you can't be locked in, very early, because in all likelihood, this is taking you down a path that you don't have much experience in, specifically, from a technological point of view, but also a user behavior point of view and other dimensions, such as in this case, the channel. And so I think that's a good, piece of advice, is to keep, a very open mind in going down this road, because in all likelihood, it's going to change.
That's that's a great point. And that's something that we see those opposing forces with, I think, each of our customers. Maybe there was a couple that we didn't see that with, but and those opposing forces is what you just said. That's very true. It's going to change. On the other hand, they want to be there first.
Right.
They want to be there first. Let's push it to production. Let's have that by Christmas. Let's have that out by Christmas.
Okay.
And that could be, and that's a balancing act. You have to decide whether you want to be the first one out, or you want to have a longer test period. Usually the former wins, and then you go into later. You have to go into some additional changes and additional development. But again, those are trade-offs that you have to face.
So, reflecting on your experience in working with the variety of different companies, usually hardware, and that makes sense. What makes a successful project? What are some best practices that you can see or that you've observed for people to take note of and to, consider while they go down this path?
So I think the successful projects there, again, that's, I think, similar to what we discussed, is the combination of these external and internal factors.
Okay.
And usually if one is strong enough, then the others won't be as important. So for example, the external factor, if you have a lot of demand from the market and people are looking for it, and that was the case with the medical device I mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Even if you jump a few steps on planning, you usually, if you get enough orders, that will
kind of compensates for things.
That's compensate for things. On the other hand, if you have the internal factors, so if you have a strong buy-in and the organization understand, for example, the leadership, CEO, CTO understand that that's the way of the future, that's the path that they want to go in, then they give you enough room to develop and adjust. And you have to be careful with your planning. You don't want to jump steps in planning, mistakes in system architecture, understanding your users. Those are things that are very costly to later change. So if I need to summarize that, a successful project from the point of view of the things you can control is make sure the organization is bought in, go through thorough planning, and take baby steps when introducing the product, because, as you said, Bruce, is that's going to change.
All right. Well, I mean, I think that's really good advice. Asaf, why don't you tell us a little bit about your company and where can people get a hold of you and find out more?
Sure. Thank you. So Spicebox Labs, we've been operating for over 5 years now, mostly involved in those IoT development projects.
Mm-hmm.
What we offer our customers is basically an end-to-end solution to IoTize their product.
IoTize, like it. Spice it up and IoTize it. Okay.
Exactly. Our team has experienced team members on all of the required side and security, which becomes more and more important. And I heard one of the last podcasts your podcast that you talked about security. We think it's important and not top of mind yet for a lot of these companies.
No, and it's interesting too, because referring to that podcast, something I learned from it was security comes at a cost and people will trade it off for features. And even the military will say, what's it cost to do this? Nope, can't afford it. Yeah. So what can I do for this, buddy? And they'll take that and trade it for other things. But we digress. How can people reach your company? Where should they go?
So the best and easiest way to do that would be on our website, spiceboxlabs.com. I'm on LinkedIn, so they can search me there and just send me a note. And I'll be happy.
And Twitter handle?
And Twitter handle is at Spicebox Labs.
All right, Asaf. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And we'll see you at the next meetup, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Bruce.
Thanks. Bye. Okay, well, that was episode 15. It's a good number, a multiple of 2 prime numbers. For a summary, links, and other valuable resources, go to the show analysis notes. They can be found at iot-inc.com/podcast, where you'll find them all. Well, now I could use your help. We're trying to get this show off the ground, and the best way to get discovered is with iTunes. So if you've enjoyed the episode or found it informative, I'd really appreciate a review. All you have to do is go to iot-inc.com/iTunes, and that'll redirect you to our iTunes page where you can let people know what you think by simply giving this show a star review or leaving a comment. I'd really appreciate that. If you'd like to learn more about the business of the Internet of Things, visit my media site. It can be found at iot-inc.com. There you'll find other podcasts as well as articles, videos, and information about upcoming live events like my stream meetups and webinars. These are still early days for this show, so send me an email. I'm at bruce@iot-inc.com, and I'd love to hear your suggestions. Until next time, may your path to IoT business be a spicy one.
You have been listening to the IoT Inc. Business Show.